co-host if he needs to by any chance share anything.
Okay, so I think I'll mostly be just talking and sharing. In case anybody wants to see like a couple of images or something, I could maybe pull something up.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so I'm a very curious person. So I
Great.
start these meetings with other people having burning questions. If you don't have, I have a big list. Please go ahead.
Shubham, one more request, yeah. Please make Meena the host, because by any chance, if you need anything in middle, at least she can make other people co-host. Otherwise, she has to interrupt you.
She is the co-host.
No, make her the host so that
Okay.
not have to interrupt you. She can make anyone anything as the need.
I mean, you can do the moderation, no? Then I can admit people and do all things other.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'll just make
Okay.
Got it.
Meena the host.
So yeah, I think
Awesome. So
we did that.
Are we starting now? It's 6.
Yes. We are starting.
Yeah. So how do you want to do it? So I could kind of share a little bit more, or if you have like some questions, you could throw that out here or put it in the chat. And I think maybe putting it on chat might be good so that others can also look at it. And,
Sure.
Yeah, we could kind of do
that. The request for people is to just start writing these questions. Don't wait for anybody and everybody to just ask questions. Start writing questions and then we'll cover it. So maybe with the story that you share, I also want to maybe bring the bias a little bit I have is Alivelihoods also come with challenges and the kind of support you got from people. So with your story, if you can share a little more about what are the challenges that you faced and how did you get support, who did you get support from? And maybe start with the beginning years, because
absolutely,
the audience might be tuned to that more.
Wonderful. Great. So I in fact missed out that part in the other session. I really didn't talk about how I got into this in the first place. But I lived a very conventional life like everybody else did back then. So city boy, like went to school, went to college. In fact, I was a little bit more adventurous. So I did 2 years of science first, 10th and 11th and 12th of, in science. And really didn't enjoy the way we were taught in college back then. So I walked out of science and did 3 years of commerce. And the most interesting thing that happened in my commerce college was that classes were from 6:35 a.m. to 9 a.m., which was too early for me to wake up. So I barely went to college and spent most of those 3 years playing music, got into music composing. And so like that was also the years when India was kind of getting liberalized and a lot of TV channels and radio stations were opening up. And they all needed music composers at the time to do jingles and background scores. And I jumped right into that. So I'm a self-taught musician. I didn't go to college anywhere for music. And just kind of got into it, started composing music for television, for radio ads and all of that. And so at some point during my third year BCom, I said, okay, this is really not working for me. And I don't see this kind of being very beneficial in the future. So I decided to walk out of college after a couple of attempts to give my exams and all that. I said, okay, I'm done with this. I spoke to my parents and they said, they tried convincing me to do an MBA after I finished my BCom and all of that. I said, okay, that's really not happening. I can't see myself, doing all that. And so like one of the first challenges I faced here was I didn't have any money to get started in music, but very, very fortunately for me, my parents were quite understanding and supportive. And I really just told my father, like, I'm sure you've saved aside, put aside some money for this MBA that you want me to do. So since I'm not planning to do it, can you give me that money? I will buy a professional keyboard, and I'll get started. So he had only 2 questions. He was actually working abroad at the time. So he had only 2 questions, one to me and one to my mom. So he asked me, are you serious about this? Are you going to pursue this? One. And he asked my mother, does he practice at home? Or is he just kind of, is it a passing fad kind of a thing? So I had a keyboard at home already, by then a kind of moderate one. And I used to practice 10 hours a day. So her answer was that he spends all day playing. And to me, when the question came, are you serious about it? I said, absolutely, I'm 100% convinced about this and I'd love to do it. So he actually gave me the money to buy my first professional keyboard synthesizer. And that's how I got started. So did that for several years, and somewhere along the line, while I totally enjoyed and loved composing music, which is the act of creating music, sitting with other people and writing lyrics and putting music together, I did not enjoy the business side of it at all, where I had to like be very fake and like tell people things that they wanted to hear. And very soon I got disillusioned with all of that. So I started looking out for other things that were calling out to me. And one of the things that called out to me was a youth-run non-profit in Bombay called Association of Youth for a Better India, where they were working on active citizenship and helping people understand democracy and things like that. So I joined AYBI, and that was really the beginning for me of like my interest in all these issues that I'm working on today. At AYBI, I met a lot of young people, many of whom were still in college, much younger to me. I was already like 23, 24 by then. And somehow their passion hit like, me very hard, that these are young kids who are like doing so much. And so I joined them. I also worked with them. And so there I met three other people, very good friends of mine. And one of them was instrumental in getting me to start thinking about all these ideas about sustainability and systems thinking and all of that. So I started reading a lot of books, started traveling around India. And so this guy, you should all like meet him at some point. His name is Leslie Nazareth. Wonderful, wonderful man. And so he's also a very talented musician, like, amazing writer. So we spent a lot of time, like the four of us, the other two friends and Leslie and me, we spent like a whole year just sitting and talking. Every Sunday we'd meet, sit for like 7, 8 hours and just chat about all these things. And then we came up with something called Phase 5, which was our first organization. And Phase 5 was really an attempt to answer the question of like how we were looking at society, how we've evolved as a society. And we realized that there have been like 4 broad phases, like prehistoric human beings who then kind of got organized into tribes, who then moved into city states, and then finally into nation states. And we said, who says this has to be the final phase? Like maybe there has to be something that evolves out of this, and something that works better for everybody on this planet. So we called it Phase 5 because 4 phases we were already experiencing, and the Phase 5 would be something that we co-create together with other people around the planet. And so we started that, and we did a lot of workshops for students and with other people. A lot of MBA schools and all invited us to do sessions for them. So we started doing that, ran that for about 5, 6 years, but then all the others in the organization got busy with other things in their personal lives and gradually had to exit. Unfortunately, they had to take care of other things. So I was left, and by then the travel bug had already bitten me. And that was also around the time I had gone to Ladakh and had that experience with the cloudburst that I mentioned in the previous session. So when that happened, I said, okay, it's time to do something different now. And all the issues that we were talking about were very dear to me. So I said, let me put that as in the form of a travel component. So one of the things I didn't enjoy much during my Phase 5 days was when I would talk to an MBA school. They would literally listen to us for maybe half a day or something like that in a classroom somewhere. And at the end of the day, they would just go back to their regular lives. So it really didn't, stay with them, what we were talking about. And I said, what I really needed was a captive audience who wouldn't run away at the end of the day. And travel was a great way to do it, because if you're in Ladakh, you can't run away anywhere. You're stuck with me for 10 days. And that was pretty cool, because for 10 days, we would get a chance to talk 24/7 about all these ideas. And more than that, we would get to see things that were happening. So earlier, I was showing people films about melting glaciers. Later, I could actually take them to a melting glacier.
Wow.
And I could talk to people about, we would meet a villager who would talk about his childhood. How much snow used to fall in Ladakh when he was a child, and now how much snow was falling now. So a lot of these stories started coming up, and we started engaging with all of that. And so really that's how Journeys with Meaning began, very organically. And
Mm.
so I hope that answers your question about, well, I still haven't talked about the challenges so much, but I
Yeah.
can, if you have a question, Shiva, you can go forward with that. And
Just briefly, if you could go over the initial challenges. I mean, we did
yeah.
talk about the other journey, like
Hmm.
before the journey, but initial challenges and the support that you got.
So the initial challenges, like I said, as a 23, 24-year-old, there was no money. And a lot of people back then didn't understand these ideas at all. So in fact, one of the colleges that we went and spoke to, the dean over there said that he really understood the ideas, but he said it's about 10 years early, like because our students won't understand it. So can you
Mm.
tailor it for them? So a lot of it was about what people would, sort of find palatable. And we had to customize it, tone it down, temper it down so that people wouldn't get threatened by it or feel scared at what we were talking about. So that was one big challenge we faced. And back then there were no resources really. So the internet was just beginning in India, and like it was difficult to get access to a lot of this kind of information. Books were expensive, and YouTube didn't exist back then. So there was no social media, so we couldn't really connect with other people around the world so easily. So those were some of the challenges we faced. And so how
Uh, is it my internet?
Shubham, I think he lost his connection.
Okay, okay. I thought it's my internet. Mm.
No, sir. No, no, no. Vinod, it's not audible.
Okay, so I can hear you.
Now we can hear you.
All right, you can. Great. All right, all right. Yeah. So,
Mm.
so like financial challenges, we didn't have money to start. So a lot of what we did was basically just jugaad at the time. So we'd, start up in the most simple way possible without waiting for the most ideal conditions to happen. And I think like we started phase 5 and then later journeys with meaning with literally 5,000 rupees because
Oh,
that's all it required at the time to get it started. And I didn't even register Journeys with Meaning until 2015, though I'd been running it since 2007. So
ha.
all I had was a Facebook page, but I didn't even have an account in the name of Journeys with Meaning until 2015. So a lot of what I did back then was basically just jump in and figure out, jump into the pool and figure out how to swim, that sort of a thing. And
Mm.
so a lot of my early years were about learning whatever I needed to learn. So okay, we need a brochure. We didn't have money to hire somebody. Learn how to use CorelDRAW or Photoshop and design your own brochure. So learn designing. Then how do you do content design? Go and read up some 5 books on content design, and then learn and do it yourself. So pretty much everything I did was the self-taught model back then. And so I think what happened is that gave us a lot of confidence to not see challenges as something negative, but as something positive. That okay, there will be challenges, things will be in your way, but you can figure a way out, and you can actually learn what you need to learn to move ahead. So
Wow.
that's how we kind of did things back then, and I think even like today we kind of carry the same values and same principles even today. So
Any who did support you in the journey in the beginning? Any
So
person?
family for
Okay.
sure. Then a lot of friends who were very supportive. So when we would travel, we didn't have money for hotels and stuff like that. So we just stay at friends' homes, and
Wow.
often we would only travel to organizations, and like different organizations, conferences, and there we'd make new friends. So each time we would make new friends, that would be an opportunity for us to stay with each other when we would travel. And all of our transport was public transport. So we would take local trains, we would take state transport buses, uh, absolutely no flights and things like that. So a lot of it was very like grounded in reality, and a lot of the people that we met supported us. So I've stayed in farms across the country. I've stayed at homestays across the country. I've actually walked into people's homes, complete strangers, and asked if I could stay with them. And like, people around India have been so supportive and said like, just come and have dinner with us, and like you can sleep in this room.
Wow.
That's like that kind of kindness is something that I've experienced all over India, and one of the best parts of India actually, I think.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So now I think I'm just opening it up for audience. Please go ahead. I already see some questions. I'll just narrate them. Do you see benefits of travelers to the places they visit beyond financial income?
Okay, so
do they help spread knowledge, skills?
Absolutely. So
or Heis can ask. Heis, you can directly ask the question. I don't need to narrate it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Go for it.
Yeah. No, so one of the reasons I do this is because of the so like financial income is of course one part of it, because we do contribute a lot of whatever cost we incur, like travel cost, that goes to the local communities that we stay with, that host us. But apart from that, I think it's a beautiful way of knowledge exchange. So like our students and our groups that visit these places with us, they get to understand a lot about different cultures, different ways of life. And what we like to do is break them out of this idea that there's only one right way to live, which is something that we are taught in our cities and in our kind of mainstream education. There's one right way to live, which is the urban culture kind of a thing. And when we travel to these places, that's the first thing that gets broken, that there are multiple right ways to live depending on the context, depending on the geography, depending on the location, and lots of other factors. And to be able to respect that, to be able to learn from that. So while a farmer that we meet in a remote village in Meghalaya may not be as educated as you in a school or a college, they're the ones who will survive a disaster because they know how to grow food and you don't. And so those are the kind of things that we often talk about over there. But parallelly, it's also a lot of knowledge exchange for the hosts, because many of them, they encounter our lifestyle only through television or through tourism. So they don't have a reality check in that front, because television sells them like advertisements. So they sell one half of the story and not the other half. So they sell the products, but they don't tell them what you need to give up in order to get those products. And when they see tourists coming in with laptops and DSLRs and all of that, they think, oh, this is cool, I'd like these things too. But they don't understand what that person has given up in terms of their time, in terms of their quality of life, in order to be able to afford those things. So the other side of the conversation is also with our local host, saying that it's absolutely fine, like if you desire some of these things and if you want to use it, it's not okay for us to tell you not to use them and things like that. But do understand the price that you will have to pay for it. Are you willing to let go of your pristine land, your traditional cultures which have been protected for thousands of years or hundreds of years, and all of that are in danger of disappearing? So if you can kind of understand both these sides and then make your choices wisely, then that's really the conversation we try and have with them. And,
so I just want to add one more question on the same lines.
Sure.
So there might be so many people who travel with you and with other people in your organization. Have you actually seen somebody doing more work in those areas? Like you can call them impact stories, or
sure.
Has that exchange happened? And yeah.
So are you asking who's taking a shift or whose behavior? Are you able to hear me?
Now I can hear you. There was some breaking in between.
Okay. Right. No, so I was asking, are you asking about people who've traveled with us and then who've undergone some sort of a shift in thinking or behavior?
Yes. For them. What are they doing now, or any of the stories that you have about did they do something more?
Absolutely. So a lot of them, when they encounter such experiences, it at the very minimum, it compels them to start thinking about their lives back home. What are the kind of privileges they've received or have been blessed with, And also it gives them context about the larger, world that, which they've sort of not been looking at. So a lot of the focus on the trip is to get them to start thinking about these issues. And for a whole bunch of people, I think that thinking process starts, and we don't treat each trip in a transactional way that, okay, you've come on a trip, you've had that experience, and now that experience is over. We treat it as the starting point of a long relationship. So my intention is that the trip is just the beginning for somebody to get to know these ideas. And I would hope very fervently that these people stay in touch with us. And even if they don't choose to travel again with us, but can they at least have conversations with us? We encourage that. So trip is over, fair enough. But if you have questions, please write to us. If you want to just have a conversation and like sound us out on something that you're going through, please call us. And that's something that's happened, a lot over the years. But apart from that, we've also seen people shifting gears. So many people have actually dropped what they were doing in terms of mainstream careers, and they've adopted other kinds of work possibilities. Many of them take sabbaticals and then explore, like they volunteer with some of the organizations that we visit and learn from. So a lot of that happens. So we've had people who have started rooftop farming in cities like Delhi, or like the one friend of ours who was an air hostess with Air India. She actually became a midwife at the end of a long process of questioning after traveling.
Wow.
So we've had those kind of stories, and that's also really the hope that people have that courage. The journey becomes a space for them, like a safe space for them to put forward these concepts.
It got stuck.
And his light went off, so that's not a good sign.
Oh.
I think he lost his power.
I did, but I'm back now. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's fine.
yes.
There's no power, so you'll have to make do with this blurred image of mine. But maybe what I'll do is I'll turn off my video because I'm on a phone connection right now. But I'll be on audio.
Sure. So the next set of questions are around travel now.
Sure.
It's much more around when you take people on travel journeys, do other people feel intruded in their privacy? And what is your take on flying now? And
On flying.
Flying, yeah. As in taking aircraft. And the third one is around what are some regulations which apply to eco travel enterprises?
Right. So I'll go in the order that the questions were asked. So the first question from Rajashekar was, we were talking about interconnectedness and how can we better appreciate it? And in case of travel, what kind of travel? So in terms of interconnectedness, I think a way to appreciate it is to understand that it often does not show up in very visible ways in our day-to-day life. And you'll have to kind of go under the surface and look for these connections there. So on the surface, in fact, things might look very disconnected. And one of the things that we do is we talk about what are some fundamental similarities, or like fundamental things to look out for. So how do you live, for example, right? Everybody needs shelter. Now that's a very fundamental way of looking at it. But in a city, you might have a very different kind of house. So while the outward kind of function changes, the basic principle that everybody needs shelter is still the same. So we try and find simple connections like that. Right? Where does our food come from? Where does our waste go? So these are all things that will help people understand how things are interconnected. So a lot of the students that we travel with, they don't have much of an idea about farming, for example. So they simply consume the food that comes from the farm and then they forget about it. But what we try and do is connect them to the farmer who grows that food, connect them to the land on which that food is grown, connect them to the river that feeds that land, and connect them to the glacier that feeds that river. So then all these different connections start coming up from just one experience that they're having. Or we use a dry toilet in Ladakh where there's a closed loop system. We use the toilet, and our human waste after a couple of years of decomposing becomes soil, becomes manure for the fields. So we talk to them about how that is a closed loop and there's no wastage anywhere, there's no pollution anywhere. Whereas in the city, when we go to the loo, we just flush and it disappears from our sight, out of mind. But is it really out of sight, out of mind? It doesn't it have an impact, body into which we are flushing it? So what does that impact? So we talk about these kinds of things to get people to think a lot more about interconnectedness. And in case of travel, what kind of travel? So we talk about responsible travel. So our idea of travel is to make sure that our footprint is very, very low. There will be a footprint just by existing. We have a footprint on the planet, but you can make very intentional choices so that your footprint is very minimal. So we stay at very simple homestays. We stay in we partner with a school in Ladakh, there's a wonderful school called Sekmol, Mr. Sonam Wangchuk's organization. So we stay at Sekmol for 5 days, which is completely built with rammed earth. It's powered by the sun, and the students grow their own food over there. Our students, kind of volunteer over there for all these activities as well. We go to village homestays and stay in the village. So a lot of the travel that we do is done very simply. We try and avoid driving around too much. So we kind of design our itineraries in a way that it doesn't require too much of traveling. We try and walk as much as we can. So these are the kind of things that we do over there while we travel. We make sure that we don't pollute. So if we go on a trek, we ask our trekking guides to, bring us very simple biodegradable items. So like, potatoes with boiled skin, you can actually throw the skin somewhere and it doesn't actually pollute, rather than giving us fruity in a cardboard box with a plastic straw, which we might end up having to dispose of somewhere where it shouldn't be disposed of. So little choices like that, are the way we travel really. From Hayes, there's a question about what is our policy about flying now. So great question. It's also a bit of a dilemma for us because we have to balance time and money. So on the one hand, we'd love to take people to Ladakh, and because we feel that there are places in India which are very remote and which are the few places in India which have still preserved their culture in a kind of meaningful way. But to get there by road from, say, where I live in Goa to Ladakh would take 9 days up and down if I had to go by road and train. And then that limits the number of people who travel, because then, most people don't have that kind of time. So, but from 2007 till 2016 or 17, we actually did only road travel. We didn't fly at all. So I've been going to Ladakh since 2006. My first flight to Ladakh was in 2017, I think. And now what we tell people is that you have both options. You can fly if you choose to. However, we also try and offset it in some way. So for example, if people want to make a contribution to an organization that does, reforestation or afforestation or some kind of natural planting, that sort of a thing, then you could try and donate, or you could volunteer in such a space, so that even if you've chosen to fly, you can try and offset at least some of the damage that you've contributed to over a period of time. But I feel like even though flying is a very kind of, it causes a lot of carbon emissions and a lot of damage. In this particular case, because there's a lot of learning that's happening, and hopefully that learning will last them a lifetime and, provoke them to think in many other ways and change their lifestyle in many other ways. I think it kind of offsets it to some extent. Having said that, we are still very open to people traveling by road and train if they can, if they have the time and the energy to do that. We still encourage that. And in fact, I often tell people that if you want to do that, I'm willing to even cut the cost of our program a little bit for you, because that way, you're actually voluntarily choosing to travel in a more kind of challenging way, which requires more of your time and all of that. And so I hope that answers your question. If you have more, please do feel free to add them here. Akash is asking, are there any laws that apply on the eco-travel enterprises, any regulations? So India has been a late adopter when it comes to sustainable guidelines, but we do have a set of sustainable guidelines, fairly stringent set of guidelines. So if you had to follow it to the T, most organizations would not be able to exist. But how we look at it in the responsible travel space is that it's better to get started and then slowly work your way up, rather than try to sorry, I think I got muted accidentally. So if you're able to hear me now, basically what I was saying is that there are sustainable guidelines which we follow. Some of them are internationally accepted guidelines. So we try and make sure that, like simple things, for example, like we try and, camp away from the water. Like if we had to go use just dig a hole and go there, that's our loo. We try and make sure it's far away from any water sources so that we don't pollute the water source, right? Or if we have to, like we try and stay in places which are built with local material, run powered by renewable energy and things like that. So these are also some of the guidelines that, these are not laws, these are guidelines. In terms of a law, I think what we'd have is probably you have to be registered somewhere. So, and that registration has to be with the government in some form. So whether it's a proprietorship or a partnership, things like that. So you have to have some sort of a legal entity, and you need to comply with various government regulations in terms of taxes and other things. Like you have to keep make sure that you follow all those. Apart from that, there aren't really too many other guidelines, there are too many other laws that one has to follow. We try and follow safety guidelines, we try and follow responsible travel guidelines as much as we can, so that we make sure that our participants are safe and our host community doesn't get affected negatively. So that also leads me to the next question about intrusions. Somebody's asked about community seeing the visitors as an intrusion. So we actually don't go to any community without first visiting there and like talking to people there. So I personally go to those places first, spend some time there. We meet local organizations. I build a rapport with people in the village over there, and I tell them this is what we plan to do. We would like to bring students here. There will be like 20 to 30 students, teenagers, so they're likely to be quite noisy and lively and stuff like that. So if you think you can like manage that and handle that, we will follow your guidelines. So if you say that everybody needs to stay in one place, we'll do that. If you say that we'll divide the group into two people, 3 people in each homestay, we'll do that. Whatever works for you guys. So that's the kind of conversation we have. We also tell them, don't go out of your way to give us city amenities. So the reason we are coming here is not to get urban amenities. If we had to do that, we'd just stay in the city. But the reason we are coming here is to learn from you and live like you do. So don't offer us Mountain Dew when we arrive at your home because you think that's what we expect. Give us nimbu pani, like simple homemade tea, something like that is absolutely fine. And we will eat the same food that you eat. And our participants, our group, we don't expect you to sit and clean the vessels for like 30 people. Each student will pick up their own utensils and clean it in a responsible way. So if they use ash, we use ash, so that sort of a thing. So we make sure that our participants participate completely in the lifestyle of the homestay hosts and that community. So that way we try and make sure that we are not intruding into their lives. We ask people not to carry gadgets. So our students don't carry gadgets over there. So we encourage them to leave behind their laptops and cell phones. So in fact, our student trips are cell phone free. They bring their cell phones because their parents need to stay in touch with them at the airport and things like that. But once we arrive at the destination, we collect all their cell phones, we keep it with us. And we say that you're here to experience this place. Don't look at it through a cell phone lens. Look at it as it is. And many of the teenagers are quite, upset at the beginning because they don't think they can last a whole day without being able to listen to music or checking Facebook or checking TikTok or whatever they check. But the good thing about these places is there's usually no internet anyway or no connectivity. So even if they do have a phone, it's usually just for music. But we try and sing more. We try and play local instruments, or if somebody's a musician, they can play that instrument, and we try and make other than a very individual experience. So and we've actually heard students say that we are feeling far more comfortable at the end of the trip. Like we don't feel as depressed. We don't feel as kind of judged, because on the phone, they have to be online all the time and respond to things immediately. But after 8, 9, 10 days of not having a phone, they start to calm down, they start to breathe, they start to observe things around them. So when we do a trek, for example, we might say that, okay, for the next 1 hour, don't even speak to each other, just observe. Tell us 3 birds you saw or 5 colors that you saw, or things like that. And they're like, really, we can't even listen to music while we're trekking. And we're like, yeah, that's the whole point. You're trekking, so pay attention to the trekking. Don't pay attention to music, which you can always listen to back home. So those are the kind of things that we do. Okay, so other questions are, is there any travel scheduled by your organization as participants along with your organization? If so, how can we access it? I could share our itineraries with you guys if you're interested, just to show you how we design them. And the idea is like we keep it very simple. Days 1 and 2 are really about bonding with the local community and like letting our guard down really, because both sides are a little wary of each other in the beginning, because you don't know how the other side is going to be, what they're going to respond like, and things like that. So a lot of the first 2 days is about just getting to know each other. We do a lot of icebreakers, games, a lot of laughing, joking, storytelling, things like that, just to get people comfortable with each other. Once they're comfortable, we start with volunteering. We start getting into their lives little by little, learn from them. If they farm, then we help them with the farming. If they build stuff, we help them with the building, anything that they do really. And we also have a lot of sessions where, so some sessions are very like, they're like an overview. So the JWM team talks about what's happening around the planet, like in terms of climate change, or we teach something called whole systems thinking, which is basically how different things connect to each other, right? So we teach them that the ability to zoom out and look at things from a big picture perspective. Because if you look at everything from up close, then everything looks like a problem and you think you have the solutions for everything. But when you zoom out a little bit, you realize that often you don't need a solution. You just need to stop doing something that you're already doing, and which is causing the problem in the first place. So that ability to think like that is systems thinking, to be able to see the connections between things. So we do sessions on that. We then take those sessions and make it on mirrors. So a window is an experience into a local experience. So it might be look around you and tell us what you see. So write it in your journal or draw it. What do you see? Just observe. A mirror activity tied to that would be a reflective process. So like what did you observe? What do you think it is? What connections do you think it has? So every activity, every window activity, which could be like farming, will have a mirror activity which will talk about agriculture, the state of agriculture in India. We'll talk about chemicals, the use of chemicals. We'll talk about soil erosion. We'll talk about how climate change is affecting agriculture. We might talk about monocultures, all sorts of different things that are linked to agriculture and food. So that way the students not only have an experience, but they also learn to reflect on it and take back a lot of useful information and insights from that. And hopefully those, and more importantly, a lot of questions, which they can continue asking those questions and trying to address those questions in the long run. So, okay, so other questions are how to get involved with your team. I'll share the website at the end of the session. You can write to us. The name of the organization is Journeys with Meaning. So because I realized that a lot of the travel I used to do before that was quite meaningless. I would just go somewhere and pretty much do the same things everywhere, like just sit and chill out and not really engage with anybody in the local community and all of that. And I realized that what I really wanted was a journey with meaning, which means I would learn about the place, learn about its culture, learn about how it was getting affected and all of those things. How do we market our firm? So interestingly, we've not really marketed it. It's been very organic. We started a Facebook page many years ago when Facebook first came up. I didn't even have a website till 2017. So that means 10 whole years after the organization started, we first created our website. And essentially, it was a lot of referrals. People told other people that, oh, we went on this trip last year and it was a lot of fun and we had a lot of learning. So you should go for it. And that's how the organization kind of grew. We aren't a very big firm. So in case you're under the impression that we are a very large company with like 30 employees or something like that, I'm sorry, it's just me and my wife and a few other people like facilitators who come in as guest facilitators and who travel with us, and these are all our friends. And so it's a really small organization, and we've deliberately kept it small so that we can actually engage with each person who comes and travels with us. And so marketing is done mostly through word of mouth, and if we do good stuff, hopefully people will talk about us. And is the organization inviting any type of internships, fellowships, or volunteering? Absolutely. So we are very open to it. If any of you is interested in interning with us, volunteering with us, please feel free to write to me, and I'd be very happy to share a little bit more about what we are doing, what we're working on. and we can figure out a way to work together on that. How do we deal with concerns in personal security? Also the diversity in gender terms. Very good question. So in terms of personal security, I'd like to put it this way. I trust in the universe. That if you are good with people, they'll very likely be good to you as well. And that has been my experience over the last 20 years. That when we travel with an optimistic frame of mind and with a trusting frame of mind, that we will be taken care of. We have been taken care of. So we've not had issues. I go to Kashmir every year actually, maybe more than once a year. And people say that Kashmir, it's like such a dangerous place and, bomb blasts and like gunfire and all that. Let me tell you, I've not even heard a single gunshot over there. I've seen more violence in Mumbai.
Wow.
I've seen more violence in Mumbai. Kashmir, the people are absolutely, wonderful. Like during the 2014 floods, we got stuck over there. My wife got stuck over there for 9 days. And the kind of hospitality and, like the way they took care of us. Let me tell you, in Mumbai, if you get stuck on a rainy day, the taxi rate will go up by 10 times within an hour. A 50 rupee trip would cost you like 500 rupees in an hour. In Kashmir, I traveled from Srinagar to Leh. That's like 475 kilometers on Himalayan roads, okay, for the cost of the fuel. The driver did not charge a single rupee for his time and for his skill in driving us safely over 2 days, 16 hours of driving on Himalayan 5 kilometers. He didn't charge us a single rupee. Not only that, we were in a Tata Sumo because it was packed. Like there were 4 people in the back seat, 4 in the middle seat, and the driver with 2 other people in the front bucket seat. It's a full vehicle already. We were driving out from Srinagar, 50 kilometers from Srinagar. Somebody flags us down and says, there's a German backpacker who's stuck here because of the flood. She needs to fly back. She has to reach Delhi and her flight from there. Please take her with you. And like a bunch of people in the cab protested, there's no space, we can't take her, how will we take her, all of that. Driver says, nothing doing, she's our guest, she's in trouble, I have to help her. He takes a rope, ties it around the whole front seat, creating a backrest for this lady, puts a blanket over it, makes her sit between him and the other 2 guys in the front seat with her legs on either side of the gear shift, right? And he drives like that for 16 hours. He actually drove like that on a Himalayan road, Zojila Pass. Just Google Zojila Pass images. Like, that's the craziest pass in the world I've seen for driving. It's so dangerous. And yet he's driving with like a lady sitting next to him with a gear shift in between her legs and 2 other guys over there.
Wow.
Right? And 8 people behind him. And he charged us the cost of fuel. So that's the kind of people we've encountered all over India. So I don't worry about personal safety at all. I feel like people are absolutely wonderful human beings across the country. If you trust them, you will receive a bounty of kindness, right, from them. And in terms of gender, we've had a lot of excellent gender balance. In fact, I would say it's been 70-30 more women traveling with us than men. Perhaps because when we say Ladakh, a lot of guys think it's a motorcycle trip across the Himalayas, but it turns out to be not. But a lot of women are very interested in the way we travel, and we've had like really good, like a great kind of experience on that front. Apart from that, we also like our student trips are very balanced usually because schools have a good gender balance, the kind of schools that we work with at least. And so we get a very good mix of girls and boys traveling with us. So that hasn't been a problem at all. How do we see design intersection with the local administration? Do any challenges come with managing this type of enterprise? Not at all. In fact, like I said earlier, we partner with local organizations. So local organizations are already established there. So we use their help. We take their help in designing our journeys. We take their help in figuring out any local issues that might be there. And because they're there with us as our local, partners, local guides and all that, we've rarely encountered any difficulty at all. And it's been quite smooth, actually, I would say. Okay, so Raja is asking, what is the book you were reading, the one on identity? So it's a book called India from Midnight to the Millennium by Shashi Tharoor. It has a chapter on identity where essentially, very simply, he says that he talks about his Malayali identity, but he poses the question that why do we consider one identity as our primary identity? So like right now, sitting here in front of you, I'm 20 different identities. So I'm Indian, of course. I'm also Hindu. I'm a male. I'm a Palakkad Iyer. I'm in the category of people who's 5 feet 5 inches plus. I wear glasses, so I'm in the community of people who wear glasses. I'm a musician, so I can like name a bunch of other identities like that. So why should my Indianness be my primary one? And that hit me very hard. That sure, like I am all these different things. So why am I holding on to this thing so rigidly? Can I let it go? And I'm also human. I'm also human, right? I'm also a global citizen. So why can't I adopt that identity when I'm talking to somebody? And that's what did the trick for me. When I saw my Kashmiri friend who said, "Acha, aap India se aaye? Are you from India?" And I lost my head the first day. But that night I read this passage, and the next morning I was like, uh, I'm a fellow human being, and he's asking me a genuine question, not with any malice. He genuinely didn't see himself as Indian, and that's absolutely fine, right? So that hit me very hard. That okay, he doesn't see himself as Indian, but he's human like me. Can I sit and talk to him? And like that really opened up the door for me. And I said, okay, then literally, why are we holding on to these things? Let's let go of these identities. If we have to hold on to something, let it be the widest possible one, the most universal one we can find. Why does it have to be a limited one? And if we have to pick a limited one, in the famous words of Arundhati Roy, why don't we all declare ourselves as republics and say, I'm my own republic. Why should I care about anybody or anything? Then why even be bothered to be Indian or Hindu or whatever it is, right? So there's really no reason for it. You can, if you can shift identities like that, let's take the widest possible one. I think that's what I went with, and that's the book that made me think about it. Okay, so Mubaraka asks, I want to understand which audience I cater to. How do I reach out to them? And didn't understand what the tourist does when he goes with eco travels. Is it like slow travel where we go to a place for a longer duration and understand their culture? So the audience I cater to is anybody with an interest in traveling responsibly, anybody with an interest in understanding why climate change is occurring, how are we contributing to it, what can we do about it? So when you look at the world around you, I'm sure you all see problems happening around you. So these learning journeys are essentially, designed to help you understand a little bit more about that and hopefully find inspiration and find some answers about what you can do in your life. How do we reach out to them? We usually just put it out on social media. We've tied up with a few schools that are interested in this kind of travel. So that's how we find our audience. The schools, if they like our trips, they come back next year. We don't need to market to them. And with other people, their friends, they kind of spread the word for us. Some of them come on different trips. So we've had people who've come on a Ladakh trip and loved it. So they've come on a Meghalaya trip after that. Might want to travel with us to Kashmir or to the Sundarbans later whenever they can manage that. So that's how we reach out. And so it is absolutely like slow travel. So we don't have a packed schedule. So it's not like, 9 to 11, do this, 11 to this thing, do that. It's not like that. So there are often days on which we say, okay, you have the whole evening free, go sit by the river and chill out and read a book or volunteer or do what you want. There will be other times when it is structured and we say, okay, we have a conversation class with the Ladakhi students. So let's, help them with their English, or let's go and help them with their farming. So there are structured sessions like that. And then there are lots of unstructured sessions over lunches and dinners and breakfasts where somebody might have a question and then it just, goes into a long conversation about a lot of different things. So that's the kind of travel that we do. How does our livelihood help you financially? So, so I actually started off with a gift economy model. So when I started this off in 2007, 2008, I practiced 5 years of gift economy, where I offered all these trips free of cost, as in free of cost to me. Like you still had to pay Indian Railways, for example, but if you took their trains, but I wouldn't charge a fee for my time. So I would say the trip costs exactly this many rupees. So this is like your 482 rupees for the ST bus from Manali to Delhi to Manali. Then at Manali, we'll stay in this hotel, which will cost us like 500 rupees per head. If you eat a meal, let's say 200 rupees per person. So things like that, I'd add it up and tell them, and I'd say this is the cost of the trip. At the end of the trip, if you feel that I'm doing something interesting and that I should continue with this, I'll keep a box in the room. You can put in whatever you want. You can take out whatever you want. I'll leave a box in the room for 1 hour and you can do whatever you want. So I did that for 5 years. And it actually worked out for me because I had a lot of support. My parents, I used to stay with my parents and things like that. Then in 2012, my father died and he had a, a series of heart attacks and all that. So we lost times in 8 months, and a lot of our savings went off in that. So at that point, I said, okay, I will not be able to financially sustain myself with this model. So what I'll do is I'll start charging people. So we've been charging people a fee for our time and effort over the last several years. But on every trip, we keep 3 or 4 spots open for people who want to travel at a subsidized cost. That could be a young student, that could be somebody from an NGO, that could be somebody on a sabbatical. So I invite people to talk to us and say that, okay, this is the reason why I'd like to, travel at a subsidized rate or maybe not pay anything at all. So we find a way to work with them. We say that, can you document the trip for us? Can you photograph it for us? Or can you, shoot video clips, which will help us later on. So if you can help us out in any way, come and do that, and we'll, cover your costs. So we'll try and make sure that you don't have to spend anything. So on every single trip that we do or every workshop we do, we offer that kind of a model, so that it kind of balances. It helps me earn a living, but at the same time, it also doesn't prevent people from traveling with us, the cost. And
so I asked this question. I just wanted to ask one more thing. Is this the major or like for other livelihood that you have, or do you also earn through other means?
so
If somebody is
means
considering a career in this, yes.
Okay, so this is my primary work. I don't do anything else. I'm not a software engineer on the side or anything like that. I'm a facilitator, full-time facilitator. I do facilitate workshops or other organizations. Sometimes people invite me to do a session for them, and they offer me whatever is comfortable for them, and that's how I kind of earn a living from it. And but it is a business in the sense that I run it as a business, not as an NGO. So I don't receive funds from anybody. We've never received a single rupee as donations from people or grant money or anything like that. Every single rupee has been money that I've earned and put back into the business. And that's also intentionally why I've kept it small, so that it's manageable, to run it in a certain way while providing me a living. So other questions? How much do we charge for an 8-day trip? Are there scholarships? Yeah. So scholarships I just talked about. We do offer scholarships, and we include low-income students the very same way that we try and. So for low-income students, what we do is we try and find sponsors. So there may be some family which may be willing to sponsor an extra child apart from their own child, and we've had people do that. So that's been very good for us. In terms of how much we charge for a Ladakh trip, it would be anywhere like, say, something like 38 to 40,000 for an 8-9 day trip. For a Sundarbans trip, same duration could be like 25K, 25,000 or so. The reason it's priced a little higher is because we do not negotiate with our homestay hosts or local partners. We ask them, how much would you like to receive from us as a fair amount for the time that you're spending on us, the food that you're feeding us, all of that. What would you like to receive? Whatever they say, we pay them. We do not negotiate with them saying that, oh, we are coming 5 times this year, so please reduce the rate for us. No, we don't. So that's why it tends to be a little higher than some of the other organizations that also visit the same places. And we also make sure that so basically this cost is also not inclusive of the travel cost, because again, like I said, some people choose to fly, some people choose to travel by train and road. So we leave it up to them to figure out how they want to travel. We just give them a starting date and an ending date, saying that this is the date you need to be here, this is the date you can leave. So then you can kind of work backwards from there and figure out when you need to leave and when you need to arrive and things like that. So that's the kind of thing. So in terms of scholarships, for people who absolutely need it, we try and make sure they don't have to spend a single rupee. For those who can afford it, we say it's a sliding scale, contribute whatever you feel comfortable contributing, and we'll try and figure out the rest from our end. Weren't we tempted to make it a bigger entity? Not really, because we feel that then, one of the things I love doing is facilitation. So if I were to make it a larger organization and kind of become the manager of that organization, then I will not be able to facilitate as much. And so then I might as well be running any other business, right? So I'm trying to keep a balance between growing as much as we need to grow so that we are able to do justice to the work that we are. A little bit of scale is required. So you shouldn't always stay small, but you don't have to be like a mega corporation, transnational or anything like that. You could be a medium-sized firm with a few people working in it who are doing a good job. And so that's why we've kind of kept it small. Rashi is asking, is our organization based in Navi Mumbai? So yeah, I actually lived in Navi Mumbai all this time. I only moved to Goa a couple of years ago. So we are registered in Navi Mumbai. But now, like I kind of couldn't handle life in Navi Mumbai. It was getting too congested. So we moved to Goa where it's greener and in many ways nicer. So yeah, so that's those are the questions that I think. And Soparna is asking, what are the charges for an individual? So again, it varies from trip to trip, but I would say anywhere between say 25 to 40,000 or so, depending on the duration of the trip, depending on where we are going. And if you're a sponsored individual, then of course it will be much lower than that. It could be like 8,000, 10,000 rupees. Or fully sponsored means you don't have that, but otherwise we try and cover that also sometimes for people. Great. So I think that covers most of the questions. Mubaraka says, sorry, she got logged out. Was her question answered? Yes. Mubaraka, did you were you able to hear my response to your question, or
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think this is pretty good. I just wanted to maybe ask you just one pro tip who is considering a career in eco travel or environment education. Just one tip you want to give them.
Okay, so I'd say don't overthink it. Just jump in and get started. There are a few things to keep in mind. One is make sure that your footprint is really on the lower side. That means you don't, it's your responsibility to that you're visiting. So for example, we think of the smallest things because there are so many unintended ways in which we can cause damage. So one way is that we visit this beautiful village in Meghalaya where there's a lovely waterfall and the community is very special. So we ask our groups not to tag that village on Instagram, because then what happens is you're taking the control out of those people's lives. It's all over Instagram, and then a bunch of people will descend on that village and start asking for things or start doing things there, and that might cause a lot of harm to the village. So we say, don't name the village. We have a certain local partner there who knows how to kind of introduce people to that village, and he does it. And you talk to him, let him take you there, because that way we are sure that there is no damage caused. So you have to think of small things like this, so that a lot of the thinking really is about these, like, are we causing any intended or unintended damage to the local community? Are we being sensitive to them? So for example, when we take our students there, like a lot of parents want to send money with them, saying that they can go shopping and buy a lot of local handicrafts and stuff, and we limit that amount. We say you can't bring more than 2,000 rupees, because the point of this trip is not to go shopping in Ladakh or Meghalaya or whatever. It's to experience the culture there and learn from the people there. So like within 2,000 rupees what you can buy, or if you want to eat out and all that has to be done in that 2,000 rupees. So that way, like, you're not like flashing large sums of money in front of people for whom that could be definitely a constraint, and you don't want to create a barrier between yourselves that way. So the idea is to live like them, learn from them, experience what they go through every single day. So a lot of the thinking is about that, and make sure that you if you look up responsible travel guidelines, you'll find a bunch of websites which talk about how you can minimize your carbon footprint, how you can make sure that your waste is dealt with in a responsible way. A lot of different things that you can do over there, and every choice you make over there helps you become a little bit more responsible as a traveler. So try and walk and cycle more rather than drive. Try and stay in a local homestay. Try in a homestay that's built with local material, maybe powered with renewable energy. Eat the local cuisine. Don't go to Ladakh and ask for Chinese food. Don't go to Ladakh and ask for pasta, because that's not stuff that is grown there, or that's not part of their culture. If you can eat what they eat, you're also helping them preserve their culture and cuisine. Right? So these are all little ways.
Yeah. So I think we covered quite a bit,
okay.
But there is the deadline.
Shubham, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, nothing. Yeah, 1 minute.
If Vinod has time. Okay, yes.
Okay. Hi. In this COVID time, no pandemic time, most of organizations are struggling to exist. As a travel community, how you are? I mean, how you are dealing these things, so existence and things.
Dealing with the COVID impact.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So what we've done is we are all, so this year we are not traveling at all. So even though government has opened up travel right now, we are not traveling because we don't want to accidentally take COVID into these remote rural communities. So we've said that we'll wait until next year till things, we have more data on it and we'd like to see how the situation is on the ground before we start traveling. In the meantime, what we are doing is we are trying to help our local partners over there figure out some sources of income, because many of them do handicrafts. So if we can help them with that, marketing that for them, or helping them build better systems over there, so that next year onwards. So one of the things that we've always talked to our local partners and local communities about is that don't rely only on tourism as your main source of income, because these kind of things could very easily happen, and you will also lose out a lot on like your local traditional culture. You don't want to lose out on that. So keep that going, keep your farming going, keep your traditional professions going, and let tourism be a side income. Let us kind of help you to earn that extra income. But what I will pitch to our groups is that, like, we can learn about these traditional ways of life, which you will never get to learn anywhere else. So like that's what we're also helping them to achieve over there. And we have a green homestays program right now, where we're trying to find people who need an extra income, and we're trying to help them build their, open up their houses as homestays. So like, for example, we have a wonderful person who drives us in Meghalaya and Assam, and he's actually a farmer who drives to earn additional income. So we are helping him to set up his village house. We're making it into a homestay, and I will do the marketing by hosting people. If he can get it, that would be of help to him. This is what we are spending time on right now before we can start traveling again next year.
Sure.
Okay.
So
You are. Okay, so you are hiring the interns and fellows on that area, like a marketing and supporting area.
Every other area also. So we need support with marketing. We need support with content design, research. We need support with facilitation also. So some people who want to travel, they can also kind of be part of this. People who want to write for us, people who want to design content for us. All these areas require we require support. Completely open to volunteering or interning in any of these ways.
Great,
Sure.
super. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we are already overshooting time, but I definitely wanted to thank you. I think you covered a lot. And people were very also asking from various perspectives, and that is beautiful. And I would also, so we also written the website name in the chat. So people who are interested, please go ahead. And Vinod, I think.
And I'll put my email ID down. So people, if you want to connect with me, feel free to write to me on this email ID. And so I think so. Akshita, I don't know if you have time right now, but if you write to me, I'll share the books. I'll share some books with you, which can help you build your knowledge on ecotourism and environment. I have a pretty good collection of books that way, which I can share with you.
Wow.
So, sorry, Vinod, can you share your number if you don't mind? Or shall we write to you?
No, you can. I'm happy to share my number. If you Google me, you'll actually find my number all over the place.
Okay.
So, but here it is.
Yeah, so much. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Awesome. Yeah. So
great. So
thank you so
I hope
much.
that was helpful to you guys, and yeah, it was completely my pleasure. So thanks, guys, for inviting me to be a part of this and to share my story. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write to me. I'm happy to share more experiences, knowledge with you, resources with you. So if any of you wants to also start up your own eco travel enterprise, please don't hesitate. Just reach out to me, and happy to help.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And you can go to the main room now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.